Hey guys, this is Paul again. Just wanted to show you now for the Build a Cure Play Test It Forward game, how to start the game. So we've already, in the last video, dealt out all of the cards, and we've already assigned these two diseases, unfortunately, within the first deal. And so the game will go on until all of the diseases on the table are cured. Now, as you see, these disease cards will come up as they're dealt from the pile. And, that's how more diseases or symptoms are drawn. And so it's pivotal that you get these done as soon as possible. So if you see right here, this is an example of an open hand that we would be playing with. And, we're pretty close for the avian, with getting the 15 and the carbon 2 and the oxygen, working towards it. And so I wanted to show you kind of an example of one turn for a person. So we'll say it's the first turn, so I do not need to collect any markers because the game hasn't started just yet. So at the beginning of my turn, I'm going to pick up 2 cards. So I will add these 2 cards to my hand, which is a hydrogen 10 and a hydrogen 1. And for easy stacking, you can also stack up like elements right on top of each other, so that way you can easily see there's a 1, 10, 15 in your hand. There will also be color codes just to easily differentiate between them on the table. So next, I'm going to kind of collaborate with my team and say, hey guys, based on what you have, is there anything that I should be playing to get us closer to this? So I'll scoot these over for a little bit. As you can see, my teammates here, they have a few bonding cards, and they also have a carbon 15 and a carbon 1. So that gets us pretty close for the avian influenza. That will have all of the carbons available to solve it. So I'm probably not going to play my 2 on there. We'll save that for a little bit. Now there is a carbon 3 here, but that's where the strategy comes into it. So we'll say I'm going to play the 10 and the 15 hydrogen on avian influenza. So I would place both of these down, and I would put my tokens on there. So for this example, I am yellow. And so that's 2 of my turns, placing the 10 and placing the 15. Now I have a polar covalent bond card that we could then bond both of these together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I put that in the resource discard pile, and I can take my tokens off because now they are safe. So both of these can now be moved underneath of avian influenza. So that would be the end of my turn, and if you see, I placed element cards and then I used bonding cards. That was all 3 of my actions. And now all players discard down to card limit. So the card limit is 5 for this game. I only have 4, so I'm good to go. So then it would go to the next player. So they would pick up 2 cards. Oh no, a disease card. So they will go ahead and exchange this in as their first action, or not as their first action, sorry. And they got unstable elements. So this was really fortunate that we did this, because this says all unbound elements on the table must be discarded when this card enters play. So because these are bonded, they are not unbound elements. If I would have left these open and they still had my tokens on them, they would then be discarded and they would be moved off of this disease because they were not bound. But I am really glad that we brought that in. So these would still be safe. This card would basically be null then, because there's nothing on the table that it could have negatively affected. So we move that over to the disease discard pile. So let's see if there's anything that I can do for this. I will go ahead and add a carbon 1 onto this, and we'll say my color is green. So I'll put that down, and just for demonstration purposes, we'll go ahead and just say that I'm done with my turn. And so we discard down to 5, we're good because we've got 4 cards. So next, it is the last player's turn, and they will pick up 2 cards. Oh no, another disease! So you can exchange that in for the next one. Oh, and they got malaria. That is extremely unfortunate. So with this one, they're going to lose 1 element card at the end of each turn, and that will be out of their hand. So we'll assign that over there to them. For this one, we're working at trying to solve avian influenza right now. So I will go ahead and add my carbon 15, and they will add their purple token on there. Now, the other cards that they have is a complex covalent bond, which means that they can bond together any number of elements or compounds. So we're going to go ahead and use that towards the avian influenza. So we'll play that, and both of these tokens now get removed because they will be bonded. And so there's carbon 16, which is exactly what we need to finish that. And so we will go ahead and first discard that complex. And now you can move the carbon behind avian influenza. And basically this is just a way to show that carbon is now completed for that compound, for Tamiflu. So we have 16, that's already done. But for this, we only have 25 out of the 28 hydrogens. So we're going to try to work on finishing that. Basically, this is a good example of how you would start the game and how you would play the cards. There are various other cards that you can play with, such as recycle resource, which would then let you pull from this resource pile. There's also some recycle element cards, and those will let you pull from the element discard pile. So that's why we're kind of separating these out here, is to say, if you want to pull an element, you're going to have to pull from there. If you want a resource, you can pull from there. Now, the unique thing about this is the element resource or the element recycle card gets put in the resource recycled deck. So I can actually use this resource to then pull up an element card if I need to pull something from the element card discard pile. So that's one of the unique things that there is. There are 3 element recycle cards and there are 3 recycle resource cards. So use them wisely. Next, I'll show you quickly just an example of the bonding cards. So there's going to be 3 different types. There will be the simple, the polar, and the complex. So the simple, we're going to go over first. It's combined any 2 elements. So an element is any one of these element cards. So that could be like a hydrogen or a carbon, or an oxygen. So with this, I can combine 2 of them. So I could either put the carbon and the hydrogen together or the carbon and the oxygen. The big thing is just only 2 of these together. And if you notice on the card, there is little words kind of faded out, just mainly for the beginner. It'll say element on one side and compound on the other side. And this is just an easy way when you're stacking them to kind of see, is this an element set or is this a compound set? So in this case, it would be an element because that's what's shown here. If we moved it over, that would then be a compound. So that's just some housekeeping rules. So a simple would combine any 2 elements together. So I could bind those 2 together like that. Now, in the event that we have this, you would not be able to use a simple covalent bond because this is now a compound. So an individual card is an element. Once you bring 2 of them together or more, then that is a compound. The next one is a polar covalent bond, and that will allow you to combine any 2 elements or compounds together. And so in this case, because one's an element and one's a compound, we could bring those both and make one big old compound. Now the last one is the complex covalent bond. This one is very useful, very special in the sense that we'll say we bonded all these together, and then we played, both of these. And I only had a simple covalent bond card, so I can only combine 2 elements. So these would then be bonded together as a separate compound. They're not brought together, but they're safe until my next turn. So if I were to play then a hydrogen 2, I can't use a polar covalent bond to bring these together because I can only put 2 items together. But I could use a complex covalent to bring any number of compounds or elements together. So if I played that, this could all then be brought together, and we have one big happy compound. Anyway, that's the brief example of compounds versus elements and the bonding cards.